Welcome to CPAC Now, America Uncanceled. This is Matt Schlapp riding solo because Mercedes is on a train to go do the Greg Gutfeld show. Gutfeld tonight. You might have seen that I was on last night, and that's a great show. Greg Gutfeld is a funny guy. By the way, he's just funny. When you just talk to him, it's not all scripted. He just has a nice, sarcastic view of the world, which I really appreciate. And while I was on the show last night, Greg had a great idea, and I just tweeted out a version of this to these woke corporations. My tweet says, we'll put it up on the screen, so Greg Gutfeld has an interesting idea. If American Express wants to attack its customers and employees, basically it's white, straight, Christian employees, and sow division, then maybe it's time to forgive credit card debt or cap their interest rates. Conservative America will no longer blindly ally with corporate America. And I put up corporate America in air quotes because I don't know if there's much about America in these corporations anymore. And my hashtag was corporate political orphans. So it's my view and the view here at ACU that we have just, the conservative movement in this country has been the number one political ally of corporate America. We want to cut their taxes. We believe in that philosophically. We want to cut regulations. Once again, we believe in that philosophically. We want to give them a playing field where they can compete internationally. But if these very same corporations are declaring war on the conservative movement, it's not even just the conservative movement, just these American ideals and Americans, their employees, their customers, by calling their views supporting the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence or the Bible, or having traditional views on questions like marriage and family and life, then we're not going to support these companies because they have to stop. And they're literally destroying this country. And so our message is to American Express, of which I have a gold card and a platinum card in my pocket. I loved telling the women in the Schlapp family, don't use it anymore. That has a side benefit for me. But the point is we've got to push back on these companies and push back now, including these employees. We all have friends who work for these big companies, and it's time to stand up. If we don't stand up now, we're going to lose it all. And one of the great senators we have on today is Bill Hagerty, who's going to be on the show. And he's going to talk about the fact that instead of just being a member of the club, he decided to stand up and oppose the infrastructure bill, make it harder for it to pass. He was not one of the 19 Republicans who supported the infrastructure bill. He was one of the majority of Republican senators who opposed it because he viewed it as the exit ramp and the entrance ramp, really, to pass this terrible big infrastructure bill, $3.5 trillion of additional money on top of the $6 trillion or something we've already spent during the pandemic, of which we're not in anymore, to beef up the economy and to juice up the economy. And for those of you who are watching who are economists and are in the private economy and know a lot more than me on these questions, what's happening with inflation is scary. I can remember being a kid and we had double-digit inflation, and Jimmy Carter and Gerald Ford and others were failing to take on inflation. And Paul Volcker and others had to do some pretty draconian things. And I remember my parents, we lived in New Jersey at the time, and I remember my parents cussing and moaning about paying that mortgage bill. When you have a double-digit interest rate on your mortgage bill every month, it really makes you worried. And then it was hard to sell homes, if we remember back then. And we're going right back there. The other thing that's happening is we're losing our cities. And our cities are being taken over by drugs and crime. And it was funny, I had a driver on the way back from Union Station, which has become incredibly unsafe in D.C., and he talked about the last time he picked up a client, he had to get into a fist fight with somebody who was high on drugs and trying to take his customer's luggage away. So, in the midst of high crime, dysfunctional cities, and the fact that we have companies leading the charge on attacking American citizens, here's what Joe Biden wants to do, and here's what the socialists want to do. They want to spend $200 billion for universal preschool at a time when they won't even let the schools open up, and now they're trying to close them down again, but yet they passed $200 billion for universal preschool. They want free community college for 2 years. How are we going to pay for that? Now it's not having a vocational tech and alternatives to four-year college. Now it's just paying for it all. This is the parade of horribles go on and on and on. The one that's particularly problematic is by 2030, not too many years away, they want the power grid to be 80% emission free and reduce carbon by 50%, which isn't going to happen without you and I paying 2 or 3 or 4 times as much for energy. Maybe some of us can afford it. A lot of people can't. And the forgotten men and women are getting forgotten again. And we just got to make sure that we all work as a coalition and keep communicating and pushing back and win next November and make this stop. But this time when we win, we got to hold the Republican Party to account to stand up for these things. And if they don't, the Republican Party will cease to be a factor in American politics. Right after this break, we're going to be joined by a new senator, Senator Bill Hagerty from Tennessee, who's making all the right moves these days. And we'll be right back after this short break. And we are now joined by one of these great new conservative voices in the United States Senate, someone who's really been standing up against this profligate spending and the ridiculous policy that Charles Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and Joe Biden are trying to jam through. He's got a lot of titles. He was the ambassador to Japan for President Trump and did so much to help elect President Trump. Senator Bill Hagerty from the conservative state of Tennessee. Senator, thanks for joining us on CPAC Now America Uncanceled.
Wonderful to be back with you, Matt.
All right, so let's get down to business because there's a lot happening in the United States Capitol that has people really concerned around the country. Why have you been such a strident voice against what we are being told is this wonderful bipartisan achievement of an infrastructure bill?
Well, we heard the talking points for months. And look, Matt, I'm for hard infrastructure that delivers a real return on investment for taxpayers. Infrastructure is in my DNA. I worked my way through school shoveling asphalt on a road crew. My dad worked road construction. My grandfather did. That's been in my life forever. I understand it. I was the commissioner for economic development in Tennessee. The infrastructure helped us grow our economy. And Tennessee's economy is doing astoundingly well compared to some of these other states. But this bill that was supposedly about infrastructure, when it was actually delivered, all 2,700 pages of it, had a lot of things in it that weren't infrastructure. And we still didn't have the cost number until last Thursday afternoon. And we've been told all along that it would be, quote, paid for, yet it wasn't paid for. In fact, it didn't miss by a little bit. It missed by over $250 billion. And the reaction of the Senate Majority Leader was, let's accelerate the voting on this. Let's vote on it tonight. Let's sweep it under the rug. Let's get this momentum with a patina of bipartisanship around it. Let's get this momentum going with this, quote, bipartisan bill so we can move right into the $3.5 trillion Bernie Sanders authored, complete socialist spend-a-thon. And that was the game plan, and that's what I stopped.
And you've been on the Senate floor pushing the fact that this is just like the gateway drug to $3.5 trillion in new spending. You tweeted, "I voted against the infrastructure package, which is just a smokescreen to distract from the $3.5 trillion tax and spend spree from the Democrats that's just around the corner. I didn't come here to make friends. I came here to fight for Tennesseans." Now, look, a lot of these 19 Republicans are people who are friends of yours, they're friends of mine, they do many good things. How come they got bamboozled on this whole thing that a infrastructure bill, Biden made it very clear, and so did Schumer and Pelosi, they wouldn't allow that infrastructure bill to go alone without it being tied to and sent to the president at the same time for his big budget-busting reconciliation $3.5 trillion bill. How come they didn't get that?
Well, I'm sure my colleagues entered the process in good faith, trying to accomplish something on a bipartisan basis for infrastructure. But I'll remind you that the Republicans don't control the pen when the deal gets put to paper. The Democrat staff does. And by the time it got dropped, there were a lot of things in there that I can't imagine my colleagues were aware of too. In fact, a few of them actually moved their vote. People that had been involved in the actual development of this actually shifted their vote. I think they were obviously disappointed with what they finally saw. The real concern, though, is that within 2 hours of President Obama, within 2 hours of President Biden having a handshake deal on this, on the bullet points of this bipartisan infrastructure package, he says, I'm not going to sign it unless I get the $3.5 trillion right alongside it, the totally partisan, 50 vote socialist package. So he tried to walk that back, but Nancy Pelosi stepped right up and made it very clear. Nancy Pelosi has said that she will not entertain and take up the infrastructure package until she has the, quote, social infrastructure package, the soft human infrastructure package right alongside it. That's been her pledge to the liberal left wing of her party. That's who's beating the drum over there in the House and frankly in the Senate too. And so that has been her promise. What she's able to do now, she's been empowered to take that infrastructure bill at this point and hold it hostage. And then let my colleagues, my Democrat colleagues in the Senate know that if they ever want to see this infrastructure bill, if they ever want that bill to have the light of day, they're going to have to go right alongside and vote. All 50 of them are going to have to vote for this $3.5 trillion reconciliation program that they're going to use to slam through Bernie Sanders' socialist debt bomb on the rest of America. So that's the position we find ourselves in right now. That's the dynamic where Pelosi is going to have the ability to force the senators in the United States Senate on the Democrat side to come with her. Our job, I think, Matt, is to make it so doggone uncomfortable for the Democrats in the House who are in swing districts that Trump won, that they've got to break with this, that they've got to push back on their own leader. I think that's the focus. And I've been hearing the fact that I was able to slow this down for 5 days and air this and have the sunshine come into the room and have American taxpayers understand what's at stake here, how much debt they're really talking about putting on the backs of our children and grandchildren, and how much non-core, non-hard infrastructure is in this bill. I think that's allowed this whole conversation to really ramp up, and people are now very concerned about the $3.5 trillion bill. They're already concerned about the $1.2 trillion infrastructure package, and even more so about what's on the way. So I think there's an opportunity to put a lot more pressure on the Democrats in the House right now to affect that process
I concur. And one of the problems with anything that's comprehensive, and what you have with both these bills, is a comprehensive spending plan, and then you have a comprehensive, basically, tax increase plan with more government mandates and more spending. And the way the Democrats, and I give them great credit, I always do, boy, they're tougher than us, at least the 19 of your colleagues, they're putting them together because when a well-meaning Republican senator says, I'll be for your infrastructure deal, but I don't want this in the deal, that's a step too far, the Democrats would drop it from the infrastructure bill, and what I'm being told is move it right over to the big budget bill so that we still get the bad thing in law, but it's just on a different vehicle. And that's why when it's comprehensive, oftentimes it leads to no good.
Yeah, Matt, I've been a business person all my life. I'm new to the United States Senate. It's the first time I've ever held an elective office. But the process of cutting a deal is something I'm very, very familiar with. And sometimes what you negotiate out of a deal is even more important than what's in it. And it's exactly as you said. What kind of compromise, what kind of bipartisanship is there when they're doing the process that you just described? Well, if one of my Republican colleagues had said, I don't want this into the infrastructure bill, they just drop it right into the partisan reconciliation bill. There's no compromise there. What happens, though, is that it gives Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden the talking points that we created this great bipartisan wonder. And it puts this patina of bipartisanship on this whole package that they're trying to move through in tandem. Schumer's been clear about it, too. It's a two-track process, as he said. But they're going to move them through in tandem and give the image and the talking point to the American people that we've started with this great bipartisan thing. We're going to add on this other reconciliation package to make this wonderful new society that's going to be pushing America over the cliff into socialism. By the way, it's going to be loading trillions more debt on the backs of our children and grandchildren. But that's the path that they were on, and that's what I slowed down.
That's right. And look, Joe Biden, as you have brought up, it's a split Senate. The idea that the Democrats have some amazing mandate to push socialism is completely wrong. Joe Manchin would never win in West Virginia if he was associated with these obnoxious policies in this big budget bill. You've gotten to hang out with Joe Manchin a bit. Maybe you've gotten to know him. What's his game? Is he quietly getting all the spending in the world and making Chuck Schumer happy in exchange for not giving in on preserving the filibuster? Or week by week, is he just putting his finger in there and figuring out what to do? Or is he really better than I think he is and trying to accomplish good things?
Matt, I don't know Senator Manchin very well. I've only met him since I came to serve in the United States Senate. I'll say this, though. He's been a governor. He's been an executive, and he's had to manage real infrastructure in his state. He's also from a state that's a lot closer to my own in West Virginia in terms of outlook and perspective. And so when I hear him speak, I want to believe what he says, and what he's saying right now makes sense to me. But what he said about the infrastructure package was that it wouldn't raise taxes and it wouldn't add to the debt of, the debt that we put on the backs of our children. We didn't get there.
No,
we didn't get there by a long shot. So I don't have any reason to impugn his intentions, but as a voice of my own, it was incumbent on me to stand up and say, wait a minute, this isn't what's been advertised. I can't believe that my colleagues are really for this. The way deal dynamics work too, I get it. They've been working weeks, months on putting something together. What finally emerges in a 2,700-page document, probably disappointing to everybody. But when you miss it on top of that by over $250 billion, I think that was the time to say, let's stop. Do we even know what's in this bill? Let's air this out for the public. And I think as we did, I think we found out from a lot of constituents across the country that people are very unhappy with it.
Well, if it's true that Joe Manchin is kind of quietly behind the scenes negotiating a lot of big spending in order to preserve his vote on the filibuster, it makes me understand the context more, because preserving the filibuster when Joe Biden would allow these socialists to push everything through on 50 votes is alarming. As it stands, they can push a lot, but not everything. But when it comes to this question of spending, do you just think that there are too many of your colleagues, I won't make you name names, but there are just too many of your colleagues that we've spent so many $1 trillion under this pandemic that they've lost touch with the negative impact that's actually going to have on the macroeconomy?
Well, I think that's certainly a possibility, Matt. And if you think about the amount of expenditure that took place back in 2020, I'll be the first to say, I wasn't in the Senate, but I'll be the first to say that was a very tough time. We were looking at an economy that was undergoing a pandemic. All the projections were enormous. You remember, we were basing our projections on what might happen to our healthcare system based on what had been happening in Italy, bad data from China. So I think the Senate felt like they needed to act quickly. Is something like that ever perfect? No. And I'm not going to sit here with 2020 hindsight and try to criticize them, except to say I appreciate the fact that they were trying to deal with a true emergency at that point in time. Did they overshoot? Probably. That probably was the right tendency, though, at that time, is to step in and do everything they could to keep the economy from just collapsing on the other side. So, again, wasn't there, don't want to armchair quarterback it, but I'll point this out. They had over 90 votes on each of those packages. There was a real bipartisan concern there. What's happened since I've arrived at the Senate? And the first episode of this was the March 2021 $1.9 trillion pandemic relief package, as it was called. Only 90% of it had nothing to do with the pandemic. They're creating crises, they're using crises or the image of the crisis to do things that have nothing to do with the underlying, quote, crisis. And this pandemic has given them the opportunity to shove through socialism on a massive scale. That's what they're doing. That's what's at play here. And that's why we've got to stand and fight at every turn.
Totally. And look, you're having a real moment. Because sometimes we lack leaders, you're standing up and leading. And you're also leading on this question about what they're trying to do on the elections. You also tweeted out in the middle of the night, a $3.5 trillion tax and spend spree wasn't enough. Schumer and Senate Democrats are once again trying to federalize our elections, an outright power grab. I will vote no once again. So what we've seen in the Senate is Schumer's now pushing these election nationalization bills onto the floor, I have this theory that as they wave the fear and really kind of like waft the fear over the Delta variant, that I think they want one of the outcomes to be that we vote in the next election, much like we did in the last election, with a lot of mailed-in ballots, where we don't follow the law on those ballots, and it leads to a lot of people not accepting the results of those elections. What the heck are they trying to do with these election bills?
Well, what they're trying to do is the biggest power grab in history. They're trying to destroy the fundamental roots of democracy by completely changing the way our whole election system works, to rip it away from the states, to nationalize it, and structure it in a way that will give Democrats a permanent advantage. And what do I mean by that? They're going to basically step in and weaponize the Federal Election Commission. So the president in charge, that would be Joe Biden and the Democrats right now, would be able to name, there would be an odd number. They'd be able to name a chair, and they would be able to torture and hound their Republican opponents to the gates of hell. They would absolutely weaponize that. It's been a 3-3 bipartisan commission since its foundation because it's supposed to solve problems. This would turn it into a prosecutorial weapon that they could go after us with. They want to give millions and millions of dollars to incumbents to continue to run. They want to take taxpayer dollars and give it to incumbents so they can sustain their positions in the United States Senate and House. This is not the American way. They want to go in and do a couple of things that the bipartisan commission that was managed by former President Jimmy Carter, former Secretary of State of James Baker, came up with the two biggest threats in terms of election fraud potential were mail-in ballots and ballot harvesting. This is exactly what they want to actually put into law. They want to legislate the two things that Jimmy Carter and Jim Baker both identified as the two greatest threats to our system. What they're trying to put in place with this election law is something that will give them, quote, a permanent advantage. And they're going to continue to press to blow up the filibuster to do it. I know that my Democrat colleagues believe in the value of the filibuster because when President Trump suggested getting rid of the filibuster, letters were signed by Democrat senators. Everybody said this can't be done. We've got to preserve the bipartisanship of the Senate. We must protect the minority. But when the Democrats get in power, all of that gets set aside. You know, it's interesting, Matt, when you think about the criticism that we undertook in the Trump administration. I was serving as ambassador to Japan. So many. Mercy was serving in the White House. We were criticized on a daily basis about our lack of respect for the institutions.
That's right.
Washington. That's right. Yet the Democrats take power, and the very first thing they do is try to destroy the institution of our elections. They create a commission to basically pack the Supreme Court, a great institution in Washington the last time I checked. And now, if you just look at this process that I was just fighting back against, Chuck Schumer wanted to destroy the deliberation process in the United States Senate by accelerating the vote on this $1.2 trillion package and shoving it under the carpet so he could get onto the $3.5 trillion partisan, misused parliamentary gimmick to shove through another big, massive amount of socialism. So they have no respect for the institutions. It's all about a power grab. And this S1, HR1 is the most glaring example of it.
The final question, and we'll let you get back to work, Senator. A lot of us have had off-the-record conversations about the future of the Republican Party. They did it long before Donald Trump was a candidate. A lot of Republicans in the swamp feared Donald Trump, and then he turned out, a lot of conservatives feared him, and then he turned out to be a president that stood up for conservative policies really like we've never seen before, but also had this idea of America first. If Republicans get majorities back in the House and the Senate, which I think if the election were today, we would, if we get those majorities and we fail to fight on all the issues that we tell the voters we're going to fight on, including being pro-life and standing up for the Second Amendment and trying to get back to not having this crazy amounts of spending and getting the government out of our lives instead of every year it creeping more and more into our lives. If we don't fight for those things, do you worry about the future of the party?
I am worried about it. And that's one of the reasons that I decided to run for Senate, Matt. I mean, I've been a business person all my life. I've been fortunate to have, my wife, Chrissy, and I have a great family. And This has been extraordinarily disruptive. But as we thought about it, we prayed about it, we looked at our children and we thought, how can we not step up and fight for America right now? Because what we're hearing coming from the Democrat side is tearing at the very foundation of our nation. Socialism is the antithesis of what has made America great. It's the antithesis of the liberty and the freedom that our forefathers have fought for. And it's important to me and to my family that we preserve that for our children and our grandchildren. And it's going to take the fight of our lives to do it, Matt. And if, as Republicans, we step up and hold to our principles, and I'm confident we will. And I'm going to work my heart out to make sure that we do win the House back and the Senate back in 2022. My colleagues and I need to be fighting the fight every day and creating the opportunity that we've enjoyed so much. I want the same thing that my parents provided me. My parents provided greater opportunity than they had. You know, I was the first male in my family to graduate from college. I want to be able to continue to provide greater opportunities for the next generation too. That truly is the American way. That's why people are clamoring to get into this country. It's the most exceptional, the most unique, and the most amazing country in the world. And we've been leaders all along. We need to maintain that lead, continue to press it. And the Democrats want to cede our leadership at every turn. They want to look more like Western Europe. They want to let China win. They want to let Iran win. They want to let Russia win and turn the other way. Look, business people like me, business people like President Trump, look, we dealt in tough environments. We know that not everybody in the world sees things the same way we do, and that they don't always act with benevolence. You've got to look at things with a clear eye. And that's exactly how I've looked at the Communist Party in China. That's exactly how I look at Vladimir Putin in Russia. And that's exactly how I look at the Ayatollahs that run Iran right now. We need to see things for what they are. And we also need to look at our own nation too. And we need to realize that Bernie Sanders' vision is not the vision for America.
And, you know, the only punctuation I'll put on that excellent statement is, if the American people entrust us with these majorities, again, and I know when you don't have 60 votes in the Senate, it's more complicated, but we've got to use the budget reconciliation process, just like the Democrats are, to get a simple majority vote in the Senate, same in the House, and push all the policies that we tell the voters for a couple of decades now we're going to fight for. And that's why your voice on this ridiculous amount of spending in the infrastructure bill, I think, really cut through the din out there in the political debate. So I applaud you for doing that, and just keep doing it, sir.
Will do, Matt. And thank you for what you do. You know, CPAC has been such an incredible voice for conservatives. And you have taken this to the next level, and you're taking it around the world right now. And I'm so optimistic. I've had visitors come to my office literally in the past week while we've been doing this, talking about how they can carry the message of conservatism in their nation. And you are doing so much to make that happen. You see the need. It's not only here in America, it's around the world. And we need our allies to stand up as well. We need our allies to have the same sort of conservative spirit. And when they see that America has always been capable of being the leader, when they see that challenge here domestically, they're greatly concerned. And the leadership that you're providing through CPAC makes a tremendous difference, because people are watching America. And your voice is helping all of us stand up and continue what's made America, again, the most exceptional nation in the world. And the fact that you're now spreading CPAC around the world, my hat is off to you, because it's going to make a real difference.
Be careful, my head is swelling with so many nice things being said, but we appreciate it very much. And just make sure your colleagues know that if we keep doing this kind of spending, we might just not only have to have CPAC all over the world, we might have to have it in the Senate, right?
Thank you so much, Matt. It's wonderful being on with you.
Thanks, Senator Bill Hagerty from the great state of Tennessee. Tennessee's doing great in so many ways, and keep up the great work, sir. I think you'll agree that Senator Bill Hagerty is a very impressive senator. What must it be like to be from the state of Tennessee, where you have Bill Hagerty and Marsha Blackburn as your senators? That's kind of like perfection. Two really great leaders. And as I said, Mercy is on the Greg Gutfeld show tonight, so make sure you watch. It's always funny, and she's always funny. She's not as funny as me, but we'll see if she does better than me. We're having a little bit of a competition in the Schlapp household. And then I'm going to get on a plane and go join our great friend Adam Laxalt, who I believe will be running for the United States Senate from the state of Nevada, a place where we had a lot of voter fraud and illegal voting. And hopefully we'll be able to clean that up in Nevada and start winning these races. Adam was almost elected to be the governor of Nevada, lost in a very, very close contest. If he had won that race, we wouldn't have had all this illegal voting in Nevada, and that would have had a big impact on the presidential race. So these elections really matter. After I hang out with Adam Laxalt and Governor Ron DeSantis and Rick Grinnell and the other great speakers at the Bass Fry at the Corley Ranch, which is becoming a great annual trek for Mercy and me, although I'm going solo this time. I'm then going to be going to Palm Beach to be talking to a great group of Republicans. And then it's back right at it here in the swamp. Thanks for tuning in to CPAC Now. Thanks for tuning into the Bill Walton Show. Thanks for tuning into America Uncanceled 3 times a week at 7 o'clock. We're going to be adding to our repertoire of shows. By the way, the team putting this together, I think you can see, is making the product better and better. And we're trying to communicate to you on a fairly quick way all the issues you need to know what we got to be ready to fight back on in the country. So thanks for tuning in to CPAC Now, America Uncanceled. After my trips to Nevada and Florida and Mercy's to New York City, we look forward to being with you next week. Take care.